Hare Krishna, everyone. Good morning. We are going to continue our Kartik Zoom sessions, and this time we'll be hearing from Sankhari Khor on chapter 87 from the Krishna book. Sankhari Khor Mataji first came in touch with the ISKCON devotees in 2007, and through life's ups and downs, she kept as much contact as possible to the Katha through and by keeping in touch with the devotees and Krishna as much as possible. She eventually came to realize by 2020 that Krishna consciousness was the only way forward for her. So she picked up chanting, approached His Holiness, His Grace, Vaisheshika Prabhu for shelter in 2020, and got initiated in 2022. Professionally, she works as a GMAT expert, specializing in teaching English portions to students. So let's go off mute and welcome her with a loud Haribol. Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. All right. So sharing is enabled, Bhakti, so please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'll just share my screen. And yeah. All right. Is my screen visible?
Yes, Mataji.
All right. Thank you so much. So first of all, thank you, Ramchandra Prabhu, Ram Tulsi Prabhu, Sushila Garangi Mataji, for giving me this opportunity. When I signed up, I did not know that, we are actually dealing with a huge chapter over here, but definitely putting this presentation together was it was an immense pleasure to work on this and just stay absorbed in the service. So before I start, I'll just do a little Manglacharan. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Vaisheshika Dasadikari iti namine. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि श्री गौर भक्त वृंद. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. So my dandavats to all the assembled devotees over here. And before I begin, these are the realities. Please don't mistake it for humility. I neither have the depth nor the sincerity to study Shastras. I totally, rely on narrations. And so whatever I'm going to present here today, the entire credit goes to, of course, my Guru Maharaj, because a lot of things have been taken from his lectures and what I have learned through his lectures. And my special gratitude to His Grace Brajnath Krishnadas Prabhu. He's a very esteemed devotee in ISKCON Sydney temple, Sri Radha Gopinath temple. And I really like the way he simplifies the Vedic philosophy and makes it very chewable for us so that we can easily imply it in our lives and can use it for preaching also, give it to other people as well. So he actually gave a 5-series lecture on this topic, which is the prayers of the personified Vedas. And why did he take 5 days to do so? Let's just try and understand. This is the largest chapter in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto. The Krishna book that I have, it goes, that the entire chapter spans 90 pages. So it's a huge, huge chapter. And we are talking about the prayers of the personified Vedas, which starts from verse 14 to 41. So there are a total of 28 shlokas in there. And Guru Maharaj, in his lecture on this particular chapter, was saying that this chapter is philosophically one of the most interesting chapters in any book. In fact, he said that it could be a lifetime project to read these shlokas, understand them, and assimilate them in our lives. So yeah, it's a huge chapter. Now, this chapter is very interesting because it begins with a question by Parikshit Maharaj. Now, Parikshit Maharaj is asking that, okay, so before we get into what Parikshit Maharaj asks, This is what I've heard from my Guru Maharaj. Importance of question. Now, a question by definition, it means asking something, but the word question involves the word quest, and that word means an arduous search or pursuance of something. And he describes that, the question mark is the most interesting punctuation mark, because it is like a hook. So when we throw the hook, that's when we are able to grab something and pull it towards us or go towards the hook. And so that's how we gain what we are looking for. So that's what we do in quest also. We set out on a hunt to find something, and that the finding, we revel in that finding. We find answers to our questions, and we try to assimilate it, or basically it fulfills our purpose of looking for that question. Now, if we think about Vedanta Sutra, the very first aphorism in our Vedanta Sutra is Athato Brahma Jigyasa. That word itself means to ask question. And that's what we are encouraged to do. Being human beings, we are encouraged to ask questions, relevant questions as to why we have taken birth, who is God, what is our relationship with God, how are we supposed to meander through this material world, what is really the purpose of our life. So it's all series of questions. So asking questions is very, very important, because that can lead us to truth. Now, coming to the question of Parikshit Maharaj asks the question that how can the Vedas directly describe the supreme absolute truth who cannot be described in words? Basically, what he's trying to portray here is the limited capacity of the words, because words, they can, or Vedas generally, they deal with karma kand. That's what it appears to be, that yeah, they deal with karma kand, and they are only very limited in their description and whatever they have to teach. So how could Vedas directly describe the supreme absolute truth? And so basically, our acharyas break it down, and Srila Prabhupada actually writes this in the Krishna book, that the purpose of King Parikshit's inquiry was to ascertain from Shukadev Goswami whether the Vedas ultimately describe the absolute truth as impersonal or as personal. So that's his purpose of asking this question, that how can Vedas do that? And eventually, as we go on, we will see that this is a question for us as well, that we human beings engaged in a material body with all the limitations that we have, how can we understand the supreme absolute truth? So that is a question for us also to ask. And through the process of this presentation, we'll try to understand how, with our own limitations also, can we understand God. Now, I'm just setting the scene a little bit over here. As we find, Srimad Bhagavatam runs in certain layers. So basically, this question, we know that the main story is happening in Naimisharanya, where Sutta Goswami is narrating Srimad Bhagavatam to the sages, Shaunakadi rishis, and then comes Shukadev Goswami speaking directly to Parikshit Maharaj. We all know that story. Now, Parikshit Maharaj is in the second level where the question is raised. So in order to answer this question, Shukadev Goswami, he actually mentions the story that once Narad Muni went to Badrikashram, and he raises the same question, that how Vedas can personify the supreme absolute truth. He poses the same question to Narayan Rishi in Badrikashram. And in order to answer Narad Muni's question, Narayan Rishi narrates the story of the four Kumaras, out of which Kumar Sanandan, he narrates this story to the residents of Janaloka, where he talks about how Shrutis glorify Vishnu. So these are the layers that we are running through. And that's the beauty of Srimad Bhagavatam. It takes us through so many layers of stories, and that's what makes the narrative so very interesting. Now, before we get into Shrutis, a little bit about what Vedic literature are. Vedic literature can be divided into two parts, Shrutis and Smritis. Generally, the characterization is there on the screen. You can go through them. Basically, all the 4 Vedas, and the Samhitas and Aranyakas, they all come under Shruti. And Smriti is basically the Itihasas and the Puranas, because as it is said, Smritis are the narratives retold by sages. So Puranas, that's what we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, how many sages, so many layers that we saw. Basically, some sage is narrating some story to somebody. So so that's why it is called Smriti. However, Jiva Goswami mentions in several places, and many acharyas have mentioned it over and over again, that itihasas, especially Mahabharat and Srimad Bhagavatam, is considered part of Vedas, considered part of Shrutis. Sorry, my mistake. So they also fall under the category of Shruti. Now, interesting tidbit I found, that there were a total of 4,556 Shrutis that Vyasadeva put to paper. Basically, he compiled them. But Jiva Goswami in his Tattva Sandarbha mentions that at his time, I'm talking about 1500s, right? Like 500 years ago, he said that hardly 4% of that exists today, as in his time. Now, coming 500 years down the line, maybe that number has decreased further. So, those who says that, oh, we've studied Vedas, we can understand that how little Vedas they could have studied because of the availability, of course. So basically, it just shows the greatness of Vyasadeva. He composed 600,000 verses to compile all the Shrutis, Smritis, and Shrutis and Smritis, because Itihasas are part of Smriti. Now, moving forward, a little bit about Vyasadeva, because this question comes quite often, that people who do not, who is Vyasadeva? Why shall we believe in Shastras? Because he appears to be an ordinary human being. Now, that is not true. Srila Prabhupada oftentimes mentions that Srila Vyasadeva was the literary incarnation of Krishna. He is the Shaktyavesh avatar who was empowered to compile all the Vedic literature. However, Jiva Goswami in his Tattva Sandarbha mentions that Vyasadeva, in the current 20th Kalpa that we are in, he's not a Shaktyavesh avatar, he's the Vishnu Tattva himself. He is the Vishnu Tattva himself. So it becomes very important for us to understand his progression as to how, when I use the word refinement, basically his thought process that he went through in compiling all the Shrutis and Smritis. And so first so when I say first he composed, what I mean is that Shrutis became the essence of all the Vedic literature. They were topmost in terms of importance. But then Shrutis, they lack structure. And that's why, we hear people often say, oh, sometimes Vedas say, worship demigods, worship this demigod, that demigod, and, a lot of rituals in there. So it's not very structured. There's a reason for that, but let's not get into that. So Shrutis are not very structured. So in order to give some structure to the Shrutis, then Vyasadeva refines them, and he not writes, but basically compiles Vedanta Sutra. He puts all these teachings of Shrutis in aphorisms, basically phrases, small little phrases. But then these phrases, they are good to explain the philosophy, but they lack functionality. For example, any state or any country writes down the laws, but just writing them down on a piece of paper and circulating them doesn't work. There has to be a judiciary system in order to put those laws into function, right? So that's what he tried to do, to put these phrases into functionality. He writes Mahabharata. So Mahabharata talks about all the functionality, that how we should conduct our lives and, different relationships and stuff like that. Now, however, then comes, but we know that, even after writing all of that. When we enter the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that Vyasadeva was still very morose. And, Narad Muni comes in and he says, what happened? And Vyasadeva said, I don't know. You have to help me because you are my guru. And this is how my Guru Maharaj puts it. He says that you basically blew up. You wrote all about, the rituals and dharma, artha, kama, shastra, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, but in a very indirect way, that yes, slowly, the purpose of human life is to come up to the point of realization, what is their real goal is. But you've not done that directly. You've not spoken about bhaktas, bhakti, and bhagwan, the three sides of the triangle that completes our identity. So you have to do that. You have to present bhakti, bhagavan, and bhaktas directly, glorify them enough. And that's when Srimad Bhagavatam comes in. So that's the importance of all the literature compiled by Vyasadeva, because he himself is a Vishnu Tattva, and that gives credibility to our Shastras. These are not ordinary mundane books. Moving forward, so now I'm talking about the lineage, the parampara, why it is important to follow the parampara. So we know that Vyasadeva compiled Shruti, then he condensed them to Brahma Sutra, then he distilled all that information as Mahabharata, and then comes the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, the acharyas in our parampara also, they have written the synopsis or a thesis, in a summary in the form of theses as Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that's written by Sanatan Goswami. Now, because it is Brihad, very, very large, then Rupa Goswami actually presents to us the synopsis of that in form of Laghu Bhagavatamrita. And then comes Shat Sandarbha by Srila Jiva Goswami, where he breaks down everything into 6 books, where he's talked about everything from Sambandha Gyan to Prayojan and Abhiday, everything in these 6 books. Then comes Bhagavatamrita Karna, which is written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And in our contemporary age, in our contemporary time, in our society, Krishna book, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that's the condensed form of Srimad Bhagavatam, the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's what our dear Srila Prabhupada did for us, that he presented the essence of Bhagavatam through the Krishna book. And that's what we are reading during this Kartik month. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada. All right, moving further. Now we come back to the story after we have understood the scene over here. So I've already told you that we are running through layers into this question. And the question has been asked by Parikshit Maharaj, and now Shukadev Goswami is going to answer that question. And the way he answers this question is that he's telling him that so basically, let's if I go back in here, basically I'm telling you the story from how Kumar Sanandan, he's explaining this story to the residents of Janaloka, who also raised the same question. Basically, they are discussing the supreme absolute truth. And so what he says is that so this is the story of one Brahmanda, right? Just one Brahmanda, because we are going to talk about Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Not going to get into the details, but let's just stick to this part, that it's the story of one Brahmanda, and there are 4 kind of annihilations. Now, I'm not even going to get into the details of that, but this is the end of Brahma's day, and the night has arrived, and there has been partial annihilation, and only Satyaloka is intact. The Garbhodak ocean has risen up, and it's filled up all the lower planetary systems, and so Brahma has gone to sleep. Now, before Brahma would wake up and start his creation again, the personified Vedas, they all approach Garbhodakshai Vishnu. They try to wake him up, because as soon as the creation begins, the maintenance has to happen. It has to be maintained from the time it has been created. And so even before Lord Brahma awakes, it is important for Lord Vishnu to wake up and get control, and then the creation will begin. And so what happens in here is that out of all the Vedas, it is the Upanishads, and they are all persons. They are all personalities. We know that in spiritual world, everything is personality, and Vedas have also come from the spiritual world. I did not go into that part, that how Brahmaji, when he was born, he heard this. He could not see anything, only darkness. So he sits for meditation, and then he sees Saraswati, who tells him, oh, he hears this word tapa in his heart, and so he starts meditating, and then he gets the kama bij from Mother Saraswati, and then while he is meditating on the kama bij, from Krishna's flute, the sound, the mantra from the Krishna's flute comes, and it enters his ears, and that becomes his Kama Gayatri. So now he is meditating on Kama Gayatri, and when he's meditating on Kama Gayatri, the Pranava Om comes out of his mouth, and that Om actually starts taking roots as different Vedas in the creation. So that's how the Vedas come in existence. That's the wrong word. Basically, that's how they manifest, and so they all are personalities. So out of the Vedas, it is the Upanishads who actually are presenting directly the prayers here, and 28 shlokas have actually been spoken by the leaders of 28 Upanishads. So these 28 shlokas are cumulative prayer of 28 varieties of Upanishads. And Prabhupada very nicely say that, when a king is arisen, when, a king is sleeping and the day has come and he has to wake up and take charge of his duty, it's not that, just wake him up like we, even with our kids, at least I do that with my kids, that, I'll go to the room and I'm very softly, I'll try to wake them up, and a little bit cuddling and this and that. So so with kings also, that's the same thing. They have their court musician, they are called bards. They are called bards, and these bards will come in, and there will be nice music and nice singing, glorifying the king, and king will wake up with listening to his glorification, and then he understands his duty, and he resumes his work. That's exactly what the personified Vedas are doing. They are waking up the Lord by glorifying, but through these prayers. Let's keep it to that. And now, why do they wake up? Now, this is I found it very, very essential to understand that why did they wake Lord Vishnu? So I'm going to read this. This excerpt is from a Krishna book. This prayer of the Vedas personified illustrates that the Vedas are meant for helping the conditioned souls to understand Krishna. All the Shrutis or personified Vedas offered glories to the Lord again and again, singing Jai, Jai. This indicates that the Lord is the most glorious. Of all his glories, the most important is his causeless mercy upon the conditioned souls in reclaiming them from the clutches of Maya. So here we understand the mood of the Vedas, the mood of these Upanishads who are going to present their prayers to Lord, what they want, what is their purpose. Their purpose is that their purpose in waking up Lord Vishnu is that he wakes up and he disseminates his causeless mercy to the conditioned soul. So all they want is the welfare of the conditioned soul, so that they can understand who they are, what their relationship is with God, and how they can come out of the clutches of the material world. So that's the mood, and that's why so these books, are the Vedic literature that we have, each one of them, they have this potential. In fact, we've heard Srila Prabhupada so many times that even a book, even a sentence, even one word can change our lives. Why? It is so because the Vedas themselves, the literature themselves, want this mercy to come to us. That's their mood. They want us to take this mercy. And so when we approach these books with that faith, that mercy starts flowing in. So that's their mood. That's the mood of our acharyas. That's the mood of all the Vedic literature that we read. So I found that very, very interesting, that it's not only acharyas, but the literature that they are presenting itself wants us to imbibe that mood, take Krishna's causeless mercy and make our lives successful. Okay, so 28 verses, 28, yeah, 20 prayers over 28 verses, but I've selected about 9 of them because I could relate to them, and I thought that it's very relatable for the devotees. So I mean, everything was very, very relatable and very, very instructional. But I've just chosen a few. So let's get started. This is the first prayer presented by the Upanishads. I just have excerpts. The shloka, the translations are from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 87. Oh, you who awaken all the energies of the moving and non-moving embodied beings, sometimes the Vedas can recognize you as you sport with your material and spiritual potency. So basically, the idea over here is that both the energies, the material energy and the spiritual energy, belong to Krishna. And Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita as well. Aham sarvasva prabhavo. Everything emanates from him. Everything comes from him. However, because the material energy is so very strong, you know, by our own capacity, because the jiva is so minute, it's so minute that by its own endeavor, it cannot cut through the material coverings and realize its spiritual identity. And so, if it is only Krishna by whose intervention can we understand who we are. This sambandha gyan that we have, it can only happen by Krishna because he can control material energy. So if we surrender to Krishna, Krishna will help us clear this material covering and help us identify who we are. And Bhagavad Gita 7:14, this is what it says, this divine energy of mine, very famous verse, Devi Yesha Gunmai Maya Duratyaya. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the 3 modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, very difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So yes, we are put into this situation that we are in by Krishna. Of course, it was our desire also, and then Krishna facilitated it. But if we want to come out of it, because we don't have that power to break through it by ourselves, when we surrender to Krishna, Krishna has the ability to take us out. So that's what we mean here by you sport with your material and spiritual potencies, that you can really manipulate them the way you want. Next is 10:87:20. The individual living entity, while inhabiting the material bodies he has created for himself by his karma, actually remains uncovered by either gross or subtle matter. Learned sages become imbued with faith and worship your lotus feet, which are the source of liberation. So we all know that we are, I mean, I'm expecting that in this assembly, of course, we all know that we are spirit soul, but we are covered by the material body. But what Vedas are saying here, it's very interesting that even if we are covered, and this life, I mean, this body it's a karmic body, it's made up of karmas, right? And so even if we are encaged in the karmic body, we still remain uncovered or untouched by gross or subtle matter. Now, it may sound like really, but I don't feel that. I do feel encaged. I do feel affected by the material nature. So how His Grace Brajnath Prabhu explained the whole thing was very, very beautiful. He said that now, because we desired to imitate Krishna and lord over the world and be the supreme enjoyer, what a foolishness. Anyway, but because we desired that, Krishna had to facilitate that because that's our desire. Now, in order to facilitate that, our Sat Chit Anand identity had to be covered up. We had to forget about Sat Chit Anand. So, in order to cover Sat, he had to create Asat. And that's why false ego comes in, the Ahankar. Chit, which is the knowledge, that is enveloped by buddhi. Now, here, when I'm talking about intelligence, we are talking about material intelligence. So, chit becomes achit by material buddhi, material intelligence, and ananda becomes nirananda because now mind has concocted all sorts of, it has its own definition, concocted definition of happiness in this material world. So now what happens is that this soul has become covered by the subtle body. So the subtle body envelopes the soul, and hence Nirananda, the concept of happiness in the material world concocted by the mind, takes prominence. Nonetheless, the soul remains pristine, and realized souls like Srila Prabhupada, our acharyas, our Guru Maharaj, they they are realized souls, and so what they do is that they give us mantra. And in our tradition, we get Maha Mantra, because mantra means the sound vibration, the transcendental sound vibration that can do away with, that can cleanse all the impurities of the heart. That's what the word mantra means. And so transcendental sound vibration is the only way that can pierce through all the material coverings and touch the soul. And that's why, Gaurang Mahaprabhu also, he just said, chant the holy names. Sankirtan is the yuga dharma for this world, because for this yuga, sorry. Because the transcendental sound vibration has that potency that can cover through all these levels of envelope, the covering, and directly touches the soul. And the soul gets happiness in doing so. And the dormant love for Krishna is awakened by chanting these mantras, because the soul, despite its conditioning from I don't know how many lifetimes, still is not covered by the gross or subtle matter. The dormant love of Krishna can be awakened by this process, because it still remains aloof from the gross and the subtle matter. And the mantra meditation can actually revive our dormant love of Krishna. Now, Bhagavad Gita 7:14 says something very similar. No, this was not 7:14. I made a mistake. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond. This is 1332. This is 1332. So those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body, O Arjun, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. So Krishna also says the same thing, that although we are engaged in this body, we remain aloof, and that's why soul has the capacity to revive its original form, provided it comes under the guidance of realized souls who can give us transcendental sound. Through transcendental sound vibration, we can revive our position. Okay, the next one is 108721. The Vedas personified say, my Lord, some fortunate souls have gotten relief from the fatigue of material life by diving into the vast nectar of ocean of your pastimes, which you enact when you manifest your personal forms to propagate the unfathomable signs of the self. These rare souls, indifferent even to liberation, renounce the happiness of home and family because of their association with devotees who are like flocks of swans enjoying at the lotus of your feet. So I found this mantra very, very encouraging, and pretty much in the mood of what we are doing. That's what we are doing. This gathering is all about devotees coming together and listening to the pastimes of Krishna, and it's limitless. His pastimes are limitless, and this is what our real business is. This is how we derive happiness. And in deriving happiness, because this happiness is directly experienced by the soul, this is our way to liberation, in the sense that this is our way to reaching Krishna. This is our way to going back home, back to Godhead. Moving on to the next one, text 23, simply by constantly thinking of him. So the smaran aspect comes here. The enemies of the Lord attained the same supreme truth, whom sages fixed in yoga worship by controlling their breath, mind, and senses. Similarly, we Shrutis, who generally see you as all pervading, will achieve the same nectar from your lotus feet that your consorts are able to relish because of their loving attraction to your mighty serpentine arms, for you look upon us and your consorts in the same way. So basically here, 2 points have been mentioned in 23. The first point is that even those who think about Krishna in a negative way, they achieve the same destination as the jnanis do, as the yogis do rather, because this is what we were reading here, in text 21, we said indifferent even to liberation. So that's for the bhaktas, but the yogis, they want to get liberation, and then, chakra meditation and all of that things, it's all there in the Krishna book. Prabhupada has explained each and every aspect of it. That's why the chapter runs into 90 pages. Each and every aspect of whatever is being said here, he's just broken it down to tiny little chunks and make it so comprehensive for us. So basically that's the beauty of thinking about Krishna, that even, we have examples of Kamsa. He always thought of Krishna all the time. He was so absorbed in it, of course, because he thought of him in a negative way. He still achieved the same liberation that the yogis do, those who want to merge in impersonal Brahman. We saw that with all the demons that Krishna kills, they also get the same destiny. So it's really that easy. We don't have to get into the path of that. But of course, that's not for the bhaktas. That's because, again, Srila Rupa Goswami says bhakti has to be anukul to Krishna. It has to be favorable in nature to Krishna. And the second part that I really liked is that the Shrutis also desire to become the Vraja Gopis and enter into the pastimes, into the most confidential pastimes of Krishna. And he says that, and they say that it is possible because of their loving attraction. So if we establish that loving attraction for Krishna, if we have that burning desire to love Krishna unconditionally, without any considerations about his awe and reverence, we can also become part of that pastime. And Srila Prabhupada has said it in his books that that's what our aim should be. Even we can go there, we can reach there. Mahaprabhu says that jivas can actually participate in that confidential pastime of Krishna. The only thing that they need to do is love Krishna, unconditional attraction for Krishna. If we have that desire, if we have that longing, if we have that love for Krishna, even we can be there. And Krishna, and how nicely Shrutis are saying, you look upon us and your consorts in the same way. This applies to the jivas also. Krishna looks at us in the same way. He's just waiting for us to love him, and he's ready to take us back into his pastime. Anyway, moving forward, 33 actually glorifies the position of the spiritual master. Those in this world who try to tame the uncontrolled mind, but who abandon the feet of their spiritual master, encounter hundreds of obstacles in their cultivation of various distressful practices. O unborn Lord, they are like merchants on a boat in the ocean who have failed to employ a helmsman. A helmsman means an anchor. Very self-explanatory. If we don't have a spiritual master, if we don't have a spiritual guide in our path, we will completely go haywire, because taking the boat off the shore, one can do that, but once we reach the middle of the ocean, unless we hand over the steering wheel over to an experienced captain of the ship who understands that how to read the stars and go to the correct direction, and take us to the destination, there is no chance we can reach the shores. There's no chance that we can reach our destination. It's not going to happen. So that's why taking shelter of spiritual master is very, very important. And it also, we saw the whole lineage, that how from Vyasadeva to, contemporary acharyas and then Srila Prabhupada. It's all basically, it all started from Brahmaji. He was the first one to receive the mantra, and then the Vedas come in, and then we saw the entire lineage, and we are also part of a bona fide sampradaya. So it's very, very important to be part of a bona fide sampradaya, take up a spiritual master and practice under their guidance. Because they know the path. All we need to do is serve them, give service to them, ask pertinent questions, and take their basically imbibe their words in our lives. Next is 36. Actually, the visible forms of this world are just an imaginary arrangement resorted to by a succession of ignorant persons in order to facilitate their material affairs. So the reality about the material world, we all know chapter 15, the very first verse in Bhagavad Gita says that what this world is. Now, I found this very interesting because, Prabhupada has written, I mean, that's what the Vedas are saying, something very, very specific, that, succession, what is this material world? It is the succession of ignorant persons in order to facilitate their material affairs. Something to think about, that those people who desires material sense gratification, they come back over and over and over and over again, and this material world perpetuates. Now, why, we say, oh, this is such a miserable place, but that's only in the devotee community. Now, outside the devotee community, they kind of don't make sense of it, that how do you say there is no enjoyment? I do enjoy. There are so many things for me to enjoy. So what our Acharya says is that there is happiness. I've heard my Guru Maharaj also say this so many times, that um, there is enjoyment, because the spiritual world is made up of ananda. It's all about ananda. Its reflection also has some ananda, but in the perverted form, as we can see in the picture, as Bhagavad Gita also explains to us. So there is some happiness in this material world, but that happiness is like a drop of water in the vast expanse of desert. It cannot satisfy the soul. That one drop of water cannot satisfy that unlimited quest for eternal happiness. And that's why the jiva always feels frustrated in its endeavor to look for happiness from one source to another. So I found that it to present it this way, that material world is actually facilitated by the succession of ignorant people who wants to just have sense gratification, was very, very deep and philosophical. I know we are above time, but just trying to do justice to this chapter. Text 38. The illusory material nature attracts the minute living entity to embrace her, and as a result, he assumes forms composed of her qualities. Subsequently, he loses all his spiritual qualities and must undergo repeated deaths. How does it happen? Even if we are spiritual sparks, how is it that we forget our identity and we get entrapped by the material nature? So this is the question that has been answered here. And what happens is that whenever we engage, my Guru Maharaj again says that if you try to dabble with the material energy, it will stick to you. He gives an example of turmeric. Drop a little bit of curry of a dish that has turmeric on it, and you will take a lot of time to wash it off, wash that yellow mark off your white shirt. So this is how material energy is. It just, if we try to dabble, that's the word he used. Even if you try to dabble, not really engage with it, but if you even try to touch it, dabble with it, it's going to stick to you. It's very, very sticky. It's going to stick to you so hard that you have to get into a lot of activities in order to remove that. And that, our karma bandhan starts from there, one activity after another, this is how we remain entangled in the karma bandhan. But again, Bhagavad Gita, this is again not 7:14. I forgot to change the verse numbers here. My apologies. But yeah, this is, do I have that? No, I don't remember the verse number. I'm very bad with that. But yeah, again, a verse quoted very frequently by Guru Maharaj, that we should live like a lotus. It comes out, the lotus flower grows out of mud, but it is not contaminated by the mud or the water. Pankaja, panka means mud, and ja means that is born out of that. So a pankaj is born out of mud, but it still remains aloof from the mud. That's how we need to live, that we are in the material world, but we need to live in this material world in such a way so that we don't touch the material energy, and we remain, and even if anything comes in, it just rolls off the way a drop of water rolls off the lotus leaf. So that's the solution given in Bhagavad Gita itself. Text 39, after this, I have just one more. 39, O Lord, those who practice yoga only for sense gratification must suffer punishment both in this life and the next, from death, who will not release them, and from you, whose kingdom they cannot reach. So I found this text very interesting, and the way Rajnath Prabhu explained this, that here the Vedas are talking about two problems with the material world. The first problem is the repeated death. If we continue to perpetuate our sense gratification, our material desires, we will have to be part of the repeated death over and over again. And what happens is that because the conditioned soul gets trapped in the cycle of the repeated death, he reaching the spiritual world becomes impossible for that jiva. For devotees, what we say is that, okay, whatever bhakti we do, we may have to take a few more births, in order to fructify our bhakti, in order to complete the entire process of our bhakti. But we can see an end to death, because if we stick to the process, if we stick to the instructions of Prabhupada and our Guru Maharaj, we stick to our Guru Parampara, we will see the end to death and go back home, back to Godhead. That's the promise of our acharyas. So we can see end of death, we can see the death of death for the devotees. But those people who do not, who are only after sense gratification, they will remain stuck in the cycle of death, repeated death, and the attaining spiritual kingdom becomes impossible for them. So, Prabhupada's instruction is right here on the picture. And this is the last one. The verses finish at 41, but I've taken this as the last verse for our discussion here. When a person realizes you has no longer cares about his good and bad fortune arising from past pious and sinful acts, since it is you alone who control this good and bad fortune. The theory that we are all aware of. Such a realized devotee also disregards what ordinary living being says about him. I'm only going to talk about that part because there is something very interesting that, Rajnath Prabhu also says in his class, and this is something that I've heard from Guru Maharaj also. He says that the moment we take a material form, we have insulted ourselves. How Guru Maharaj puts it, he says that we are spirit soul, we are superior than the matter. But the moment we accept that we are this body, we demote our identity. We make a huge compromise out there, that we make a huge compromise with our identity itself. We demote ourselves from being spiritual energy to being the dead matter. And that's a huge insult for the spirit spark in any which way. It's a huge insult. So after that, whatever happens to the spiritual spark in this material body are just consequences. So what we need to rectify is that compromise that we have made of identifying ourselves with the matter and not realizing our true spiritual potency, or potential, basically, and identity, basically our true spiritual identity. So I found it very interesting. Such a realized devotee also disregards what ordinary living beings say. Then, all the insults that come to us, all the bad things that people have to say, all the negative vibes that people have to give to us, we as devotees can tolerate them, because if we have this understanding that, yes, by taking this body itself, I have insulted my real self, my true self. I have made compromise with my true identity. These are just consequences. Had I not done that, I had not gotten this body, and then these people would not have gotten the opportunity to insult me. So that was the point that I found very, very interesting. Now, so coming back to Parikshit Maharaj's question. Okay, so now everything is over. The prayers are over. And so, where we began, putting everything back, making the 360 degree circle complete. How can the Vedas directly describe the supreme absolute truth? They did so by two processes: by glorifying the Lord, there was all glorification that we heard, and by following their method of eliminating everything separate from the supreme. In very common parlance, we call it neti neti, not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. By the method of eliminating everything, we can ultimately reach supreme. However, this is a very indirect way of reaching supreme or understanding supreme. The more direct way of doing so is by glorifying the Lord. And how does glorification work? All these prayers, we know Bhagavatam is a series of prayers. So many, pick up any canto, everywhere there are prayers. Why there are prayers? The prayers are there for glorification. And when we glorify, it's not like Krishna is some egotistic personality who says, oh, you glorify me, then I'll give you benedictions. No, it's not that. Krishna gives us the opportunity to glorify him so that we can purify ourselves. When we utter his names and when we hear his glorification through his eyes, as Srila Prabhupada explains, that there is no difference between the name of Krishna and Krishna himself. When we glorify him, our jiva is getting purified. When we hear his glorification through our karna randhra, through the pores of our ears, Krishna enters into our heart and he does the cleansing process. Our chitta gets purified, our consciousness gets purified, and that's how we can receive Krishna in our heart. So glorification is a more direct way. I forgot to mention something. I had thought, when we were talking about the helmsman, how the guru is the captain of the ship and we should be under his guidance. Something very interesting, when Prabhupada actually took a ship to come to United States, Jaladuta, he suffered 2 heart attacks, and then he fervently prayed to Krishna as to, surrendered. He was surrendered any which way, but then, he's praying to him, and then Krishna comes. Prabhupada says this, that he saw Krishna and all his major avatars, Dasha avatars, and he becomes the helmsman of Jaladuta. Krishna becomes the helmsman of the Jaladuta, so that Prabhupada arrives to the West and he becomes the helmsman for the Western world to take them, to cross them over from the material world. So I just found that very, very interesting. I just forgot it while I was saying, but now I remember. So I thought that I know I'm way above time, but yeah, I found that very, very sweet, that how Krishna becomes the helmsman of Jaladuta, and then Prabhupada becomes helmsman for all the conditioned soul. And if we follow him, if we make him the captain of our ship, we are good to go. And so coming back here, now that the prayers are over, we are back to this. So Sanandan is done narrating his stories. This is the story that Narayan Rishi tells Narad Muni, and that's exactly the same story that is narrated by Shukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj, and Sutta Goswami tells the same thing to the sages of Naimisharanya. My last slide, ending with a few quotes by Srila Prabhupada written in the Krishna book. The 28 verses of the Veda Stuti are to be considered the essence of all Vedic knowledge. The 4 Kumaras and all other authorized sages know perfectly that devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the essence of all Vedic literature, and they preach this on different planets traveling in outer space. I found it very instructive. Here Prabhupada is telling us 2 things to do. First, you learn it yourself, and then you don't keep it to yourself. You preach it to others. That's how you are going to advance in your bhakti. In this connection, Srila Rupa Goswami states in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that the person whose only desire is to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead may be situated in any condition in the material world, but he is to be understood as Jivan Mukta. So bhakti is the only way to come out of the material engagement, and we can use this material world as a periphery. That's what Prabhupada says in one of his purports, that everything in this material world can be used as a paraphernalia for Krishna's service. So that's if we learn to do this, that concept of yukta vairagya, then we become jivan mukta. That's what Rupa Goswami says. And thank you so very much. I'm extremely sorry for going over time. But sorry about that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, that was such a wonderful class. Honestly, I think you could have gone longer and I would have been excited to hear even more from you. So honestly, you did such a great job. I knew you were really worried considering the immense size of the chapter and the amount of material you had to cover, but I think you did a really, really wonderful job going over the highlights and, you know, hitting all of the interesting points and concepts and things we need to, you know, remember, especially from this chapter. Such an important chapter. So especially if someone doesn't have the time to read the entire chapter by themselves, this was a wonderful, wonderful highlight summary. So I will open up the floor to any comments and questions from the group gathered here. So please unmute yourself or drop any of them in the comments or like the chat, and then I can read it out loud.
Just wanted to say thank you, Sankhari Kaur Mataji. This was amazing. Really loved it. You made our weekend. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji, this is Gopal Govind, and I really like the way you present it, and so many subtle details you research and put it together. A topic which is not touched by many people, and I haven't heard about this topic not too often. So this presentation is very good. I have to admit I couldn't pay full attention, so I have to read it, hear it again. So thank you so much, Mataji, for putting all this hard work, and it's definitely worth. It's an asset. Thank you. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank
Prabhu,
you
if
very
you
Thank
sorry, Prabhu, if you want to hear the whole thing, I mean, I could not cover a lot of things in there. If you go to YouTube and type Vrajanath Krishnadas or Prayers of Personified Vedas, Part 1, you know, it'll open up the 5 lecture series by Prabhu, and you can go through the whole thing. He's covered it in a much more detail
Okay.
and in a very lovely way.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, you kind of churned it pretty well. So I would like to hear yours very well. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Wonderful presentation and class. Sankhari, I think you set the stage for the rest of the devotees who have to present. And, you know, thank you so much. Wonderful.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. I was just reflecting on the fact that April 2020, that's when I joined ISKCON of Bergen. And since then, I've just been getting opportunities to improve my bhakti, improve my sadhana. And this service was amazing because, yes, it took quite a lot of time, but with, you know, the speaker whom I've taken my stuff from is one of my favorite, devotees when it comes to speaking. So going through all his lectures, it was such a delight. It was such a pleasure. So thank you for the opportunity, Prabhu. I think I'm so indebted to you and the entire team for this opportunity. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you should be indebted to Rati Vilas for introducing you. Yesterday, I was talking
Yes.
to Preeti, and I met Preeti yesterday, and she was telling me how you're also guiding her now. And that's the process. We learn something, and then we teach others what we learn. So that's wonderful.
Nice class, Mataji. Maybe you can share the slides, what you have all the presentation, if it's not a problem. Good.
Absolutely, Prabhuji. Not a problem at all. I'll share it with Sushila Garangi Mataji, and then it can go to the community of ISKCON Bergen WhatsApp group or wherever, however they can make it available for
With one
others.
suggestion, I guess those Bhagavad Gita numbers, I think you might want to correct before you.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, I've already have that point in my mind. So before I float it out, I'm going to do that. All the verses, I'm going to put the right numbers, and extremely apologetic for that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the one with the lotus leaf and water not touching, I think it's the Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, number 10.
Yes, yes, that is where it is. Yes.
Thank you. Nice class.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mataji, for the lovely class. I really like the analogy of the beginning slide, the question, the hook, right? It was amazing. Thank you very much.
All glories to Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Mataji. This is Pragya. We are one of the part of the group of Preeti and Rativilas, and we do regular one chant or one shloka each day. We try to do more, but time given, we try our best, and she have been guiding very fantastically. And she have been mentioning Garbhodaya Vishnu. So because we are not doing face to face or with the slide, but this time I was actually able to see what she meant by Garbhodaya Vishnu, and now I could understand more clear. So she have been very good in explaining, and we don't want to miss a single word she says. So that's how she is attracting our ears, not to be missed. A lot of knowledge, even one line missed, gone. So yeah, that's how you are perfect, and you're helping others. Thank you.
Thank you, Pragya. Thank you so much.
Okay, then. Actually, just a quick question, Mataji. On one of the slides, you have the comparison of Shruti and Smriti, and one of the bullet points had eternally changed versus getting revised with time. Could you just clarify the wording and what that means?
Right. So I'm just trying to go back to the presentation and get back. Basically, so as I said, that how Vedas take the root is that it comes from Om, the Pranava. So they remain, so when they take root, they remain unchanged. Like Vyasadeva compiled them, he put them to paper, and they have been handed down just like that. So they are not subject to change. But because smritis are narratives, they have been told and retold several times by different sages. There could be changes in the narratives, the details here and there. And that's what we see in a lot of stories also, in Krishna's pastimes itself. I remember one incident where, how many cows did Vasudev Maharaj donated while he was in the prison on the occasion of Krishna's birth. So different acharyas have given different numbers because Srimad Bhagavatam is a Puran. It's been told by different sages. They have been told and retold in different kalpas also. So the details may vary. The principle remains the same, but the narrative in terms of details may change. So that happens only with the Smritis. Shrutis remain the way they are. They are not, they are eternally unchanged because they directly manifest from
Got
the
it,
spirit.
got it.
Thank
All
you.
right. So if no one else has any other comments or questions, we will wrap up for today. So thank you all of you for making the time today and staying on to hear the end of today's talk. So I really appreciate that. And just a super important announcement. Tomorrow is the auspicious occasion of Bahalastami. And for those of you who don't know what that occasion is, it is the appearance day of Radhakund and Shamkund in Vrindavan. So it is very auspicious and very, very important. So it's even more fitting that tomorrow's topic will be on the significance of Bahalastami, and it will be given by Her Grace Arundhati Mataji. So please attend if possible tomorrow at 8 a.m. and we will all see you there. And of course, tomorrow, as usual, is our regular, for those of you in person in New Jersey, our regular center program as well. So please attend that tomorrow as well. Okay,
So today's chapter was number 87, Krishna book?
Yes, it was number 87 from the Krishna book.
Okay, thank you.
And then for anyone awaiting for the actual recording of the Zoom, it will be uploaded in due time to the YouTube channel. So please keep an eye on that for updates. All right, okay then. Haribol, everyone. Thank you for joining. Have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your day.
Thank you.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Hare
Hari Bol.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Very
Hare
well.
Krishna.